Hi, I'm Allie with the Potomac Bead Company, and today I am going to be showing you a pair of earrings that I am making for myself. This is also a great idea and a great example if you want to actually make yourself a necklace by linking these together. But I'm going to show you how to use a donut style bead and use some brick stitch to go around the bead and really to make it quite an art form. These beads here that I have and all around here come on a crazy colored strand that they're a dyed magnesite bead, and they come with all these mixed colors on them, and I'm taking them apart and adding and making different colors to go with as earrings. You can add them together and really play around. For this, the easiest thing to learn how to do something with in this style is to use a delica bead or a cube. I'm going to be using both, and I'll show you in my design how to do this brick stitch, this circular brick stitch on the donut style bead using a 1.8 millimeter cube and an 11 Miyuki delica bead. If you want to make a long, we'll put a link underneath the video in the published date and in the description of the video. There's a little down arrow that says show more. I'll stick a link in there in case you want to get any of these strands of donut beads from us or any of the materials that are used in the video. In addition to my donuts, and they do have holes in them, we're actually not going to be using the holes at all. We're going to cover them up. In addition to the donuts, you need some beads. Whether or not you want to do one color of delicas, whether or not you want to use regular seed beads. Like I said, the delica beads sit the nicest, or a cube shape, because they go right against one another. You can do one color, two colors, and you can go crazy mix and matching beads. You can also do this with any seed bead as well. It's just not going to butt up as close to the actual donut that you're wrapping. The whole thing that is going to be done is on 0.006 wildfire beading thread, and artistically speaking, you can use the KO thread, you can use wildfire, you can use fireline. For this one here, I used the green thread because I liked the green look with that olive look, as well as the bronze going around the orange and kind of doing a play on alternate colors. I'm going to be using the purplish beads, and I'm using the gray thread to go with them that you'll see on it. In addition to the thread, you do need a needle. I have a size 10 English style beading needle here, excuse me. I like to use the Pony brand of beading needle, but any will work. I also have a thread zap or a cord cutter. That's going to burn the end of the thread, and that way you won't see a large portion of thread when you get finished with the project. In addition to that, also when I burn the thread, I like to have a needle nose pliers or a flat nose pliers in order to flatten out the end of the thread. That's going to allow me to thread my needle easier and to get started with my project. To start my project, I'm going to go ahead and burn some thread off my spool, starting with about 3 feet of beading thread, and I'm going to lay out my beads here that I'll be using, and I'm going to show you how to basically, if you're a knitter, the version of kind of casting on and getting it connected to this donut. So we're going to start our brick stitch, and I'm going to show you how to get that nice look of that symmetry around the donut with our wildfire thread. So for my inner row, I'm going to begin with my cubes. Again, these are the Miyuki 1.8 millimeter cubes. On the example piece here, I started with delicas, so either way works. I have my thread and needle, and what I'm going to do is pass the thread through my donut. Bring it down to the end till you have a little bit of a tail, about 1 inch. Simply tie the thread onto the donut. We do 1 and then 2 ties. Give a nice tight pull. If you want to, you can even pull with your pliers and get that knot nice and tight. From here, we're going to begin our brick stitch. So if you're not familiar with brick stitch, every time you start a new row of brick stitch, you're going to start with 2 beads. From then on, every time you pick up a bead, it's just 1 at a time. To begin 2, we're going to add 2 beads. Drop them down next to our donut, go through the donut from back to front, and then we're going to sew up through, so the side of the thread is coming out of, up through that second cube bead. So it's a little bit difficult, I know, to kind of get that concept, but it's going up through that second bead. When that happens, you're going to get a thread pass showing on your donut. From now on, it's one bead. Add the bead. I always like it to sit right next to the bead it's supposed to be next to, kind of hanging out there at the top of the donut. Go from back to front or front to back, whatever you do. I like to just stay consistent. As the bead kind of turns over, the side that the thread is coming out of that cube is the side that you're sewing up. What this is going to do then is create that next little thread pass there around the donut, and also it creates a little bridge thread. The bridge thread is going to be from one bead over the top to the next bead in line. Pick up another, let it drop down next to your donut. So again, back to front, and kind of pull down, that lets it fall down on its side. I'm sewing back up through the bead to make it stand on its end. You can see when the delicas are done, they're going to stand nice and upright as well. Cube goes on, back through the donut, through the front, and then back up through the bead. As you're doing this, you want to make sure that there's not any huge gaps in thread showing, and that also your thread that goes around the donut is not overlapping itself. As we finish and kind of continue on, the thread will become more and more consistently spaced around the donut as we continue to add more thread. So I'm going to continue adding the beads, going through the donut, then sewing back up through the bead my thread is coming out of. As you circle around the donut, then you'll get more and more consistent as the lines happen. Off the screen, before I started this one, I was teaching my daughter how to do it while she was up here watching me getting ready to do the video. So I figured what I'd do is I would jump on actually and grab my other one that is the exact same, so I can show you as the process continues what it gets to look like. So again, it's just that same process, picking up one, going back through it, and then adding on another. As you get to the end, you want to make sure that the cubes are not falling to the back or to the front of the donut. You can see that they're sitting kind of right in the middle of the donut if I turn it around. Some donuts will be thinner that you may have the bead just as wide, or even in extreme cases, the beads may be wider than the donut. So again, just kind of make it sit to the middle of that line or of that donut bead. You also don't want the seed beads to be bunched up at all or to have any kind of wave in them. It's better almost to have not as many beads than too many, because it's going to create a bubble. When you add your last bead and you don't have any more space to go through, this is going to be the one place where you are going to see a double thread. The thread is going to go from the last cube bead to the first cube bead, because remember we started with 2 beads at once, and you're going to sew down connecting the 2. And there you have it. If you don't want the look of the double thread going on, which I'm going to not do, you can sew through and you can go back up through the bead. What I'm going to do is kind of do a little cheat. I'm going to sew up then through the second bead that we put on. So in that grouping of 2, I'm sewing up through the second bead. What that does is that allows me just to have one thread showing rather than having that 2 like I normally would. So it's kind of a little insider trick there. From now on, we're going to catch on to these bridge threads. The bridge threads are going to be used as our guide to know how many beads to put on. I'm going to switch from my matte black AB beads to just black Delica beads. Again, I'm starting my brick stitch. So I'm coming out of one of my beads from the previous row. And because I'm doing brick stitch, I'm going to put on 2 beads. For each bridge thread, the thread that connects from one bead to the other, you're going to have 1 bead. Because we have 2 beads on, we're going to skip over the first bridge thread here, and we're going to sew into the second bridge thread. Going under the bridge thread, which would basically be our donut, and then going back up through that second bead. And I'll pull nice and slow so you can see it in action. There you go. I do not want to pull too tightly. I want the beads to sit nice and straight. Because the Delica bead is a little bit smaller than the cube, you will see some thread showing, as you see here. You can put on an extra bead and make it not show. I prefer to see a little bit of thread, and I like the geometric look of it showing. So just like we were going from the back of the donut to the front, as we connect and add another bead, we're going to go from the back of the bridge thread, sewing under it, to the front of that bridge thread. Then we're going to sew up through our next delica. And I want that delica bead to sit spaced out nicely right between my two cubes that it sits below. Add another delica bead, go in to the next bridge thread. So back up through, and you can see that loop that's made. Give it a tight pull, and there you go. When I say give a tight pull, that's really hard for a lot of you seed beaters. I naturally too want to pull my thread so tightly with brick stitch, and especially circular brick that we're doing. Pulling tightly is not necessarily a good thing. You want to pull accurately and make sure that you have the same amount of thread showing and connecting those beads. But you don't want to pull too tight because it's going to turn the beads on to the side. I'm going to continue then adding a bead, going to my next bridge thread, coming from the front back to the front, and then going back up through the bead. If your bead happens to fall off, it just means that you didn't sew underneath the bridge thread. And there you have it. So you can see the spacing that's starting to occur. It's a little bit bigger from the cube to the delica bead because the cube is bigger than the delica. I'm going to finish out this row of delicas, and then I'm going to add another row of delicas for that look. So finishing out the row of delicas here, I have my last delica in right between my last two cubes. To connect to the first one, I'm going to do the same thing that I did when I connected the cubes to the first one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew down through that first delica, because remember we add 2 on at a time, and that's going to bring it so that it sits up just like the rest of the row. To get the thread then to come out of the next delica, I'm going to go up through the second delica. So I came down through the first delica after ending my row, and then I'm going to go up through the second delica. Give a little tug, and then I have my first row of delicas done. When I start my second row again, just like I did the previous 2 rows, I'm picking up 2 beads at a time, skipping over 1, 2 to the second bridge thread, going back up through that first bead. And you can choose to do a different bead here. You can choose to go ahead and start at the cubes again if you're doing the same as me. And I'm just going to pull it to make sure that when that cube sits up, it's going to sit between the 2 delicas. Add another delica and go through the next bridge thread and back up through the delica. Because I'm increasingly getting bigger and the circle is getting bigger, I'm going to start to see more and more thread that's arching over the top and creating the next row of bridge threads here. We get a little pull, and you'll see the delicas start to kind of space out. If you want them to look really closely, or to fit really closely rather, you basically would put every couple bridge threads, you do 2 delicas. So instead of doing 1 per bridge thread, you'd pick up another bead and do perhaps 1 and 2 there, just so it's comfortable and where it fits. That's how you're going to use a variety of sizes if you don't want to have the lacy look that I'm going for. So I'm going through here, and I'm just going to keep adding these beads as my 3rd row of brick stitch. So I'm going to go the whole way around now. And you can see I'm pulling, but not pulling tightly. So again, that's kind of the hard thing of brick stitch, is that it's a learning curve a lot of times with the tension and pull, because most of us naturally are going to pull the thread pretty tightly. And there I go. And I'm going to continue on then adding this 2nd row, and then I'll show you how once again we make that first bead stand up, and then we'll switch again back to the cubes. Here I am again back at the beginning row, and you can see kind of that bigger gap there. Again, I'm coming out the last bead that's connected between the bridge thread that's between the 2 delica beads. And what I'm going to do is go down that delica bead, so showing you one more time. So I'm going down the first delica bead, which creates that bridge thread from the last bead to the first bead. And then I'm going to go up through the second bead in line. And that's going to create that little gathering in that little gap. So that way you don't see any of the extra thread going through. There's 2 pieces of thread running here, but it's really hard to see that you won't actually see that as we create. So now I'm ready to do a new row, and I'm going to switch back to my cubes. So I have my cubes here. I'm going to pour those out. Same thing. If I wanted to and I wanted to keep the cubes really tight around, I would, as I add 2, I'm going to do 1, 2, skip to that second bridge thread. And I might actually go to a third bridge thread as I get places, or have that second. And just that first one, you want to make sure that you don't pull too tight and that you have the bead there. I'm going to add in. And if I wanted to do another row of delicas, there may be some places where you do 2 beads in this under the same bridge thread if you want them nice and tight. Again, I want that kind of gapping, lacy look. Just like my example piece, I want to make sure that I have that fun kind of lacy look going. That's what I like about this. And we're getting that because we're using the same amount of beads, even though the circumference of the circle is getting bigger. So that's allowing more thread to be shown and more space between each of the beads. So now we're just going to go through, put on this row of cubes here, and add them in sitting straight up, and continue again right along the way. I kind of hold on right to the section that I just came from, so that way I don't pull the thread too tight as I add in. I'll just shorten my tail quick here as I add in my beads along the way here. Again, I kind of hold my last bead so I don't pull too tight, and then keep going. So you can see that nice lacing effect that's happening as well. So I'm going to keep going around the piece here, and I'm going to flip over to this side so you can see without the bridge thread there, that pretty effect that the piece is going on. So here's the difference in look of starting with all and continuing with all delicas versus starting to actually switch up the cube look with the delicas. Once you have your row of cubes then complete, the process becomes the same. That what we're going to do is go in here and connect the thread over to the other one. If you want to connect the actual discs together, so say I want to actually create a necklace and kind of connect these discs together, pick up some of the other colors and add some more beads, which I think I'm going to go ahead and do because it makes it so much more fun. So I'll gather a couple others in different colors and use some delicas and use some other beads here. All I'm going to do to connect it, if I want to, a simple way, is as I'm going over to the original bead here in my last row, I'm simply going to pick a place on the other ring here. Take that then and go down my first bead. So all I'm doing is sewing through one of those bridge threads on the other side and go down through the other piece. That's literally going to connect the two. What I'm going to do then is reinforce that by going back through the original or the last bead, and I can link this through one more time and pull and tighten the two. That then links those two together. You can also link them together with a bead or link them together with wire, so you can really have fun kind of doing this. I'm going to undo this just so I can show you how to finish off the row before doing that. And again, to finish off the row, it's just a repeat of what we've been doing, which, as I go through here, let me sew back out and away from that thread. As you can see, me sewing out the project here. and twisting around the thread. What I'm going to do is actually finish off this individual unit here, and then after the fact I will attach these together, kind of going through and treating them as another brick stitch addition. And to finish off your disc, if you want to do it as a set of earrings or do it independently, you're going to go back through that first bead, again coming down it to make that bridge thread to make it consistent in look. And then you can go back up the first one, but instead, because I'm going to be finishing my row, all I'm going to do is sew down to the next row, there, sew down to the next row, there, and where I'm sewing is just zigzagging back and forth. And look at that, I came out right near my starter thread. Coming out right near the starter thread then gives me the opportunity to take those two threads and simply tie them together. Tying those two threads together then finishes up that whole little lacy donut. I'm going to take my thread ends now, leaving just about 1/8 of an inch. I'm going to burn down those thread edges off, and then I'm going to take that extra thread there that appears, and I'm going to burn it down flush against the beads, making sure that I'm not burning any of my threads. You can take that and kind of tuck it under, and then you have your complete disc done. So you can see they're really fun. You can add them together. You can use whatever seed beads you want. You can set them apart. You can make them a pair of earrings and really just have fun making a whole set of them and adding them and really kind of going to town. So again, if you need any of the materials to do this fun linking loop and this open donut, the circular brick stitch with an open bead, you can go back to the beginning of the video, but really all it is an open donut, like the gemstone ones that I have here, some thread and some seed beads. Tie onto the loop and away you go. So the fun thing, like I said with this, is you really can kind of go to town. If you don't want it to have that lacy look, what you would do is put an extra bead and just go through the loop. I have another video showing how to do that rather than getting this lacy look to it. As always, if you want to, you can shop with me at PotomacBeads.com. You can subscribe to this YouTube channel so you get regular updates and regular info when we have new ideas, new designs, new products coming out, and information that we think that you guys would love to receive. You can also join us on social media on Facebook and Instagram and Pinterest, as well as joining our Facebook group for beading and jewelry making. When you join that group there, it's a great interactive group that loves to make jewelry, loves to answer questions and help out fellow beaders, and really provide an excellent form of inspiration for you guys. As always, thank you so much for watching, and hopefully you get inspired, get some ideas, and have fun learning this lacy technique for the circular brick stitch earrings and necklace and pendant, and go on and go on and go on. Have fun making them. They are addictive, I will say. Be warned.